Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Muhammad Ali Rabbani and I am with the next installment in our neuroanatomy lecture series, and that is the brainstem. Today we are going to start with the external features of the brainstem. We will see how does it look from the front and from the back, and then we will go on to see the cross-sectional anatomy starting from the medulla oblongata. Next we will go to the in the next video you will see medulla oblongata, then Pons, then midbrain, and then that will be followed by the lesions of each of these areas, and we will try to figure out, backtrace the location of an injury from the lesion. Okay, let us start with the gross anatomy features. So this is a picture from Netter's Atlas, and this is showing the brainstem from the anterior aspect, like you are looking someone from the front. So it has three parts. It has medulla below, pons above it, and midbrain on the top. Let us start with the extent of each of these. Medulla oblongata, it is from between these 2 points. So what is this point? This point is the junction between spinal cord and medulla. Externally, it is defined by this. If you can appreciate, this is pyramidal decussation. This pyramidal decussation, this demarcates where the anterior median sulcus is obliterated, because the corticospinal tract descending here crosses here before going down to the lateral corticospinal tract. So this decussation is one of the point. Then the second point is the cranial nerves. Like see, you can see the hypoglossal nerve, and the here you can see the first cervical nerve. So you can identify the junction between the medulla oblongata and spinal cord as where the first hypoglossal rootlet ends and first cervical nerve rootlet start. This area of pyramidal decussation, and the third item that is not very visible in this particular picture is the place where this structure crosses the foramen magnum. So these structures collectively, they make the define the junction of the spinal cord and medulla oblongata. Then the upper end is defined by this line. This is inferior pontine sulcus or pontomedullary junction, and between them there is medulla oblongata. Let us start with the end features of the medulla oblongata. In the midline, just like the spinal cord, as we have seen in those lectures, here in the midline there is a fissure that is called anterior median fissure. This vertically going line, this is the anterior median fissure. On lateral aspect, then there is a raised areas. This raised area, is the called pyramid. Why it's called the pyramid? Actually, it's the vice versa. The corticospinal tract coming from the brain is moving down from this. The pyramidal tract is coming from here, and then it's crossing, and then it's going down from the decussation. Actually, this area is pyramidal in shape. That is why corticospinal tract got the name of the pyramidal tract. And then just on the lateral aspect, there is this raised area. This is the olives. These are the olives. This is the raised area of the medulla oblongata. Behind it, beneath it, there is olivary nuclei that are giving rise to this elevation. So there is pyramid, there is olive, and then behind the cerebellum starts, and the correction of the medulla oblongata with the cerebellum is known as inferior cerebellar peduncle. And between these two, you can see the cranial nerves that are present right here. Between the pyramids here and the olives, between these two there is only one cranial nerve, and this cranial nerve is the hypoglossal nerve, the first cranial nerve that supplies the tongue. And then behind the olives and in front of the inferior cerebellar peduncle, there are three cranial nerves. 1, 2, 3. If I should be more specific, the cranial nerve number 9, 10 and 11. These three cranial nerves, glossopharyngeal, vagus and, and accessory nerves respectively. They emerge from above downwards from the junction between olus in front and in peduncle behind. So these are the few features that are visible on the anterior aspect of medulla oblongata. On the upper aspect of the medulla oblongata, you can see the junction between these two parts. This is called pontomedullary junction. Here in the pontomedullary junction, you can see three cranial nerves from medial to lateral aspect. From the medialmost nerve is this one. This is the abductor nerve. This is the abductor nerve, most medial one. The next one is this one. It has two parts. The main motor part, this is the main motor part, and this small one is the sensory part, and this is the facial nerve. It's small nerve, it's called the intermediate nerve. It's not technically sensory because it also has parasympathetic part, so it is the intermediate nerve. 6, 7, and that leaves us with the next cranial nerve, this one, that is the vestibulocochlear nerve, the one that carries the signal of hearing and balance from the inner ear. From the pontomedullary junctions, there are three cranial nerves, 6, 7, and 8 from medial to lateral. Next come the pons itself. The pons extends from the pontomedullary junction below to the superior pontine sulcus above. So this is the pons. Pons literally means a bridge. So you can see it looks like a bridge between these two halves over the cerebral hemisphere above the brainstem. So because of the horizontal direction of the fibers, so this is known as pons. And these horizontal fibers, they are connected to the cerebellum. You can see here it is connected to the cerebellum, and here this cut end is shown. So these are the middle cerebral peduncles that connect the pons to the cerebellum. There is not much physical features to see on the anterior surface of pons except the two extents, the one that we had discussed already. On the anterior aspect, there is this groove, this depression is present, and this is the place where the basilar artery is placed, and that we will see in the circulatory lectures. And the basilar artery, that is the groove for the basilar artery. The rest of the pons majorly consist of just horizontally running fibers from to the cerebellum. And then there is upper margin that demarcates its upper end and boundary between this and the midbrain. The only other prominent feature on the anterior aspect is this cranial nerve that is exiting, that is the trigeminal nerve. And trigeminal nerve, you can again see it is exiting as a large motor node and a a large sensory root and a small motor root. So this is about the anterior aspect of pons. Then comes the midbrain, and the midbrain, its anterior aspect, two pillar-like structures are seen here. So this pillar-like structure, this is called crus cerebri. It is housing the corticospinal tract, and it is coming down from the cerebral cortex. So this is the crus cerebri, and crus cerebri on two sides, there are present on each side, and between them, between the two crus cerebri, this is the area, this is the gap that is present. That gap is called interpeduncular fossa, and through the gap you can see this sieve like area, this is called posterior perforating substance. Above it, the other structures that you can see here, this optic tract and chiasm, this tubersanarium and mammillary bodies, all of these are the part of the diencephalon. Between the two crus cerebri, you can see third cranial nerve exiting, that is the oculomotor nerve, that you can see exiting from the front. And then there is the fourth cranial nerve, trochlear nerve, that exits from the back and winds routed and comes from the front. And here you can see the trochlear nerve that has come to the front from the side. So this is all I had to show you from the anterior aspect of the brainstem. If you look at the back, let us go again from the below upwards. Let us limit ourselves to medulla oblongata. In the lower part of the medulla oblongata, it is very much like the spinal cord. Here again, somewhere here is the boundary between the medulla and the spinal cord. In the midline, you can see the posterior median sulcus, and this posterior median sulcus, this can be seen extended throughout, especially in the medulla oblongata and the pons. You can see the posterior median sulcus throughout. This is the posterior median sulcus. Here it is labeled as dorsal median sulcus. Then let us limiting to the lower part. In the spinal cord, there were two tracts coming up. So this was the fasciculus gracilis and this was the fasciculus cuneatus. Both of these can be seen extending upwards, and they expand upwards and they are seen as the dilated areas. So this dilated area on the medial aspect is the nucleus gracilis, giving rise to the raised area, giving rise to the tubercle, the gracile tubercle. So this is the gracile tubercle, and on the lateral aspect in continuation with the cuneatus tract, this is the cuneate tubercle. Beneath it there is nucleus cuneatus. So there is here gracilis tubercle and cuneatus tubercle. Okay, moving above, you can see, let me show you a little different picture. If you see from the cross sectional sagittal section, you can see the medulla oblongata. The CSF containing cavity in the medulla oblongata can be divided into two parts. In the lower half of the medulla oblongata, there is central canal. There is central canal, and this is the part that we just saw that was very much similar to that of the spinal cord. And the upper half, here, this is the fourth ventricle. This is the fourth ventricle. Here it is labeled fourth ventricle. This extends behind the upper part of medulla and behind the pons and in front of the cerebellum. So this is the fourth ventricle. So these are the parts that we are seeing right here. So this is the part that was below it. This is the part that is like the spinal cord containing the central canal, and this is the part of the medulla oblongata that contains, that is in front of the fourth ventricle. Currently we have removed the cerebellum and we are looking from the back to the front at these parts. So what can we see here? So let me comment first on the fourth ventricle as a whole. As a whole, fourth ventricle is a diamond shaped or rhomboid shaped structure. Here it is bounded by the superior cerebellar peduncles. Here it is bounded by inferior cerebellar peduncles. And in between them you can see these white running horizontal fibers. These are stria medullaris. We will see in the internal structure what they actually are. Actually they are fibers from the arcuate nuclei. So these stria medullaris, they define the boundary between the medulla oblongata below and pons above. So this is the basic overview of the fourth ventricle. Behind the fourth ventricle is the cerebellum. In front of it is the upper half of medulla and pons, back of those structures. On either side it is bounded by superior medullary vellum and superior medullary peduncles and inferior medullary peduncles, cerebellar peduncles, and superior cerebellar peduncles are joined together by this structure between them two is superior medullary vellum, and this is the inferior medullary vellum. Okay, let us now focus our energy on the medulla part. Medulla, as you can see behind the medulla, you will see in the midline, this is the posterior median sulcus. This line on that aspect, this line is the sulcus limitans. This is called limiting sulcus and sulcus limitans. And then depending upon the nuclei that are present deep to them, there are different triangles. This area is called hypoglossal trigone or hypoglossal triangle. This area is called vagal trigone or vagal triangle. And then somewhere here is the vestibular area. Somewhere here is the vestibular area. Behind that, the vestibular nuclei are present. And just below, somewhere here is area proxima, which is not labeled here. That is area proxima. this is the area that is a little responsible for chemosenses and vomiting reflex and things like that. And last but not the least, the one that we already discussed, this stria medullaris. These are the horizontally running fibers coming from arcuate nuclei on the way to the cerebellum. So these are the features that you are going to see on the posterior aspect of medulla oblongata. What structures are you going to see in the pons? On the back side, the lowermost aspect will be defined by the stria medullaris. Above, you will see the same, this dorsal median sulcus, posterior median sulcus. Here you will see the same, this sulcus limitans, and between these two, this area, this raised area, it's known as median eminence. This is called median eminence, and in this area, this lower part is a little bigger than the rest of the median eminence, and that little bigger part is called facial colliculus. So there is lower boundary as stria medullaris, upper end where this fourth ventricle is ending, posterior median sulcus, sulcus limitans, median eminence, facial colliculus, and here below it their facial colliculus is present and facial nuclei are present, and then there is some other areas, and prominent among them will be substantia ferruginea. There will be a pigmented area somewhere here, shown here too. So there will be substantia ferruginea and things. So this is about that. Here is the opening to the central canal of the spinal cord. Here is the opening to the cerebral aqueduct that is running from third to the fourth ventricle within the midbrain. Okay, let us see what is on the back aspect of the midbrain. On the back aspect of the midbrain, you can see these two paired areas. So this is the superior colliculus. It is responsible for various reflexes in the visual function, in the visual aspect. And then there is these areas, these are called inferior colliculi, and they are majorly responsible for auditory and hearing. So they are responsible for hearing, and just beneath them you can see this cranial nerve exiting this one. This is the fourth cranial nerve, trochlear nerve, and this is the only cranial nerve that is exiting from the back aspect of the brainstem. So these are the four colliculi, and that is it. I think we have discussed all this. Yes, one more thing, one word I would like to add. These four colliculi, these four colliculi, two superior, two inferior, together they are known as corpora quadrigemina. So this is another word that you may encounter. So here is a picture from the lateral aspect, from the right posterolateral aspect you are seeing. So it is showing all the other relations. Same middle peduncle is a little more clearer here. The horizontally fibers coming here are making the middle peduncle. The upcoming fiber here, these are making superior peduncle, and so on. Here you can see olive and the nerves exiting in front of the olive, behind the three nerves exiting behind the olive, the fasciculus gracilis and cuneatus and gracilis, and all the brainstem. And here is one more thing that I would like to highlight here. The inferior colliculi, the ones responsible for hearing, they are connected to the medial geniculate body. Inferior colliculi are connected to the medial geniculate body, and this area, this is known as inferior brachium. This is called inferior brachium. And similarly, superior colliculus, it's connected to the lateral geniculate body of the thalamus, and this connection is known as superior brachium. So I think that's about it. these are the pictures from the Netter's Atlas, so you can continue seeing them, go through them. This is the cross section. You will see this is the medulla oblongata here, pons here, midbrain here. Within the midbrain there is central canal. Within the pons, behind the pons there is fourth ventricle. Behind the medulla, in the upper half there is fourth ventricle, and in the lower half there is the central canal, just like the spinal cord. Here are the two pairs of colliculi. These are called corpora quadrigemina or tectum, and that's it. The structures that are present above, we will see them later on in those respective areas. And thank you so much. If you have any questions, suggestion and feedback, please let me know. You can follow us on our Facebook handles, Medicos Academics, or our YouTube channel, also by Medicos Academics. And don't forget to follow and subscribe to us. And stay tuned for the next video of medulla oblongata internal structure. Thank you so much.